welcome to the Shepherd Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We like to use this as a way to introduce you to people in our ministry, church, school, and child care. Some people who are serving, who are in roles that affect the ministry. And today I'd like to introduce you to someone who serves in a very important leadership role on our campus, and that is our Director of Early Childhood Education. That is Katy Rohr. Katy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so now I got to make sure I said the title correctly, because sometimes I'll say Child Care Director, but that's not the title. The title is Director of Early Childhood Education. So what does a Director of Early Childhood Education do?
Yeah, great question. So kind of took out the child care in it because we are taking children, but we are looking at our care also in an academic-based type environment. Mm-hmm. So we don't just take care of basic needs. We try to either get them to the next milestone if they're infants, or if they're in the toddlers, getting them to start talking. If they're in the twos, having them recognize colors, shapes, numbers, and then in our threes, just continuing that academic growth, getting them to recognize sight words or things like that. So want to make sure we get that education in there. But what I do is I am just in charge of our infants through threes program. Mm-hmm. And so this school year we had about 120 students in our program, and it was growing every month. We were getting new students and new babies, new toddlers, and it was a really good year that we had. And I just oversee the kids, and sometimes we have to move them because as they get older, they need to be in an environment that suits their developmental needs. Mm-hmm. And I would track that with the teachers, and just focus on teaching our little ones because they're really important.
Yes, they are. They are among our most priceless treasures that God entrusts to us.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so you oversee the program, little babies all the way through threes.
Yes.
And that's about a third of our school ministry. So that's a good chunk of the children on our campus.
Yes, it is a good chunk. We had very full nurseries this year, mm-hmm. and then our other rooms were also very full. We followed the guidelines of the state because we are a licensed childcare, and so we have to follow ratios and making sure we have teachers that are the right amount of teachers to students. And we have really great teachers here that love and care for the students, and families too. Our families are just wonderful, great parents, great grandparents. It's fun to see mom and dad drop off, pick up, and have a conversation with them. And throughout this time, just to get a closer relationship, trusting relationship, so they know when their kids are getting dropped off to us that they're in a safe environment. Mm-hmm. And I think they appreciate that, especially from the feedback I got throughout the months where we were only open to essential workers. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're such an ideal person for this role for many reasons. One is you're a known person around here. You've been a part of the Shepherd ministry for a long time as a student, as a teacher, now as an administrator. You have children yourself who are a part of the program, mm-hmm. so you get it from a parent's perspective. So I'd like to go into some of that history, which began at what age?
Sure, yeah. So I started at Shepherd when I was 3. And I asked my mom a few years back, like, why'd you send me to Shepherd? Because we did grow up Catholic. Right, yeah. And so it was just interesting that this is where she put myself and my brother. He graduated from here too. And I remember her telling me a story about my dad and her going to St. Luke's, and it just wasn't. They didn't like the feel, it just wasn't family to them. And she used that word, which I feel like is a word we use all the time around here. Right. And she came here, and she just felt like this is where that we needed to be. Mm. And so that's how we ended up here. My brother came here first, and then I think the threes that's probably the youngest program they had. And then I went all the way up through 8th grade here, along with my brother. He did the same thing. So yeah, we were here for quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, between being a student and working here, you've probably been here for more than half your life, right?
Yeah, I would actually say so. There's probably about 10 years of my life where I have not been here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just feels like home, and I loved school here. Made such great friends. My best friend I met in kindergarten. We're still great friends to this day. And my wedding, a couple of my friends stood stood in it, because you just build some really good relationships when you're here. So.
And you would have gone from a situation where the people who taught you are now your colleagues. I mean, we've had a lot of longtime teachers. So
Yes. So I can't call any of them by their first name. So it's always Mr. or Mrs. because the first name doesn't flow very well off my tongue. I have to keep it that way. But it's real fun to be partnering with them in the ministry, and leading as they led me and others, because it obviously made an impact in my life, because I'm back here hoping to make the same impact for others.
Absolutely. So tell us a little more about your journey of life. So growing up, we talked about you were here from 3 through 8th grade, those years of life. Who are some of the biggest influences in your life, family or here or whoever it might be?
Great. Yeah. I mean, everybody here was absolutely wonderful. I never had a teacher that I didn't get along with, didn't impact me in any, they all made some important part, made me who I am today. And so that was one reason why I, wanted to be a teacher. I've always wanted to be a teacher, like from day one, I feel like, or be in education, because my mom and my aunt were teachers, and I always wanted to grade papers. And I don't know now, as being a teacher, I don't know why I ever wanted to do that. Oh, I did. My aunt taught 2nd grade, and she told me you can't grade papers until you pass 2nd grade. So like once I passed 2nd grade, I was ready to grade papers. I don't know why I thought that was like the best thing.
Wow.
And I would play school all the time, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher for a long time, and then just being around wonderful teachers here, just made such an impact on that decision. One teacher that's always been fabulous is Mrs. Eichstead. She was my 2nd and 5th grade teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I had her twice. And she's had Austin, and then Mackenzie's going to be in pre-K next year. So so it's kind of neat to have that generation, her teaching my kids. She was always wonderful. And then I remember Miss Gary, and she was my 8th grade math teacher. And that time she was going through school. And I just remember those math classes being kind of fun, because she was kind of busy, yet also teaching us. But like, we always had a good time in that class, in that algebra class. I'll never forget that. We would joke around, and now we can banter back and forth as adults and talk about those times. So she's really influential. And then of course, family, my mom, she's been wonderful. My dad passed away when I was young, when I went to school here. And so, being here and being in this environment, I think really helped shape myself and my brother, and just going through something that tragic, inspired us in our faith walk, and just being good people, because that's who's here. It's good people. And so just the whole community really inspired me.
Do you feel like people helped step into that void and, mentored and helped you along during those tough years?
Yeah, I would probably say so. My mom was just wonderful, and she was focused on us and never felt sorry for herself or anything. Just her focus was on raising my brother and me. And then I grew up in a duplex, so I was in one side of the house, and then in the next house was my grandparents. And so they helped raise us too. And so if my mom couldn't pick us up, my grandparents were always picking us up, and at sporting events they would always be here. So it's fun to see involved grandparents, because that's how mine were, and it's fun to build relationships with those grandparents along with the parents, because they treasure their grandchildren as much as they treasure their children, sometimes probably a little bit more, because how grandparents spoil kids.
Oh, yeah.
And just to have that relationship with them, and they're comfortable knowing that their grandchild is in good care. That's important to us too.
Yeah, you've seen the value of involved grandparents. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that from your life.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, when you were at school here, did you ever think to yourself, I want to come back here and be a teacher one day?
That thought probably never crossed my mind. I knew I wanted to teach, but I don't think it was to come back here. I know that So I went to college at Concordia University in Austin,
Right.
and I chose that school because I had previous student teachers that had gone through the program and just thought they were absolutely wonderful. And a bunch of the teachers here had been through Concordias. And so that really led me into, my experience here led me to choose Concordia and join their education program. But I don't think I ever imagined myself being back here.
Yeah.
It was just a chapter closed of my time at Shepherd, and we'll come and visit when we can, say hi, but I would
Right.
never imagine I would be in this position.
Right. Did you go into it for Lutheran education or just education in general?
Just education in general.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So 4 years, and I graduated in 2009, and that's when the recession hit, and there was no teaching jobs.
Right.
And I actually student taught here in San Antonio. I came back in student taught at a public school, but then moved back to Austin right after I had graduated, and I couldn't find a job. I was driving the toll roads, down 35, around 183, just going to schools, dropping off my resume. I had a school look at me and go, well, you don't have your ESL certification. So I went and I took my ESL certification the next week, having no practice or experience. So nobody could tell me I didn't have my ESL certification. I had it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find a job. And it was the most frustrating thing because I was so passionate about teaching and I just wanted to teach. And so I got into a school in Round Rock, ISD, doing some special education work. And I did that for 2 years. And then my third year is when I ended up here at Shepherd.
And how did that happen? Did you just get a phone call out of the blue? Or?
It's kind of a funny story. So I coached at Redeemer in Austin, and I'd been coaching there for a few years. And in Austin, they have the state basketball tournament, and so I was coaching at the state tournament. And I knew Shepherd was in the tournament every year. And a lot of times I'd see familiar faces. And so one Friday or Saturday, I'm in the gym and I see Miss Gary. And I go and I talk to her, and we just start chatting. And I had an interview that looked pretty promising for the next school year, about a week prior to meeting her. But it was about February. So hiring for the next school year in February is kind of not the usual thing in the teaching world. Normally it takes till the summer to start hiring. Okay. So I wasn't, I just had that interview, but it went really well. So I saw her and she said, are you teaching? And I said, no, I hadn't found anybody to hire me. And she said, well, would you be interested in first grade? And I thought to myself, well, I did a whole year in special education in first grade. I was one-on-one with a student. I've sat through a whole, August to May of first grade. And I kind of have an idea of what is really great. It was a great teacher that I was in the classroom with, and I just would watch. I should, here I am helping other students. But a lot of times when I was in special education, I would go to rooms for inclusion, and I just watch the teacher and just gain tools also, not just sit there, but to find ways to make myself better as a teacher. And so I said, yeah, I think I can do that. At that time I was engaged. So it wasn't just me, it would be myself and my husband moving. Right. And so I went, I remember talking to Mike, and I asked him, I'm like, this has come about, and I made a comment of well, if we ever have kids, it'd be good to have a grandparent around, since he's from Nebraska and, my mom is in San Antonio. How's that? We wouldn't have any close grandparents. And so he's like, well, go interview. So I remember coming up and being so nervous and just interviewing with Miss Gary and the board. And then a week later, she offered me the position, and Mike was very supportive about it. And he said he was working for Concordia at the time, and he was ready to try out something different. Okay. And so he ended up getting a job in April at a school in town, and so it just kind of all started falling into place. And then we got married, and a week later we moved here, and then I started. So I taught with Miss Miller, which was crazy because she was my 6th grade teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And see, I have to call her Miss Miller because I can't call her by her first name. So that's kind of how it all fell. But, I think back to those 2 years when I was driving around and just really frustrated and, like to the point of tears of like, why isn't anybody hiring me? Like my resume I felt was real good. But there was a reason. There's always a reason. And the reason was because God had a spot for me. I didn't see it those 2 years, but he was molding me and getting me ready for where he wanted me to be. And that's how I look at the experience now. During those years, that's not how I was looking at it. Yeah. But I've taken that experience and I've learned every time I'm going through some type of hardship, there's a reason behind it. God's doing something to show me something in the future.
I appreciate you going into that and your interpretation of those events. I mean, we could just talk the chronology of life, but to tell a little bit of the deeper meaning behind what's going on in the events of life. And I'm wondering, let's say some of the people watching, maybe they're in one of those seasons of life right now where, either looking for a job and can't find one, or looking for someone to date and can't find one, or looking for answers of some kind. We find ourselves in these searching seasons of life. What encouragement, from your own personal experience, what encouragement would you give to people who are in that kind of season?
Right. Yeah. And it's so much easier to tell somebody things when you're not in that season. But I really, honestly, when I have gone through struggles, there's always a reason behind it. There's, if God puts you to it, he'll get you through it. And there's a reason for just these struggles because something greater is going to come out from it. And it's all on God's timing. And that's the hardest thing to hear, because God's timing and our timing is rarely ever the same. It's always different, but there's reason behind it. So when I am struggling through those times of trouble or grief, I just keep reminding myself, there's a reason that this is happening. I know God is just getting me ready for something better, or for someone better. If they're, looking for somebody, it just gets you prepared, and just to remember to just to keep going and not giving up, because that's the easy thing to do, is to give up. But God makes you a stronger person through the fight. And when you obtain what you're looking for, it feels just so, there's so much gratitude behind it. And it's just like, finally, I did it. If it was easy, we'd all do it. Right. But there's a reason for the struggle.
Yeah, I appreciate so much of what you said. God was molding you during that season for what he had in store for you. How did you say it? If he puts you to it, he'll get you through it. I've not heard it said that way before. So a lot of wisdom there. Thank you for sharing from your own experience on all of that. So, God had a plan, and in his plan you came here. It was 2011?
Yes, 2011.
Can you believe you've been on staff for almost a decade?
I know. It's gone by so fast. I think the thing that just, like, when the parts of my day that make me go, gosh, I've been here for a while, is like when I see my son's like going to be in 3rd grade. It's seeing him progress, and that's what makes me go, I've been here that long. He's already going to be there.
Amazing.
But I mean, the days here, they're just, it's a fun work environment. And so it's not a struggle getting up and getting going. So the time just flies. I can't even believe it's been almost 10 years.
Yeah. And you were 1st grade, and then was it 5th after that?
I actually did a year in 4th grade.
Oh, that's right.
So yes, so I did 2 years in 1st grade, and then a 4th grade vacancy came out. Yeah. Now, I loved 1st grade, but I didn't feel that was my strong suit. Like, I liked the upper elementary because I liked the rigor of the curriculum. And in that 1st grade, I was really happy with, though, because I had such great experience prior. And then I wanted to challenge myself a little bit more and go a little bit higher. So I did 4th grade. And then I was asked to fill in the 5th grade position. So I looped with those kids. And that was my first graduating class, was my 4th to 5th grade class. And those kids, all my kids have a special place in my heart, but that group was really special to me. Yeah. So I loved having them for 2 years. And then I did some 6th grade math the following year. So I had some a little bit for 3 years. So they're probably tired of me after those 3 years. And then I coached them in volleyball too. So I was around those kids a lot. They're great. But yeah, I've done the 1st to 4th to 5th, and I was in 5th for the last maybe 4 years before I stepped out. Yeah.
And I figured 1st couldn't have been the place you would stay because there aren't enough papers to grade in 1st grade, right? That's your thing.
That I know that, and I don't know why that was my thing. Man, I think back and I'm like, why did I enjoy this? My aunt was always like, here's another set. Like, all right.
That's so funny. And even thinking about your teaching 4th and 5th grade, just a little personal story from my family. So the other day we were reading a book, I think it was On the Night You Were Born or something like that.
Yeah.
And we opened up the inside cover and it was addressed to Ethan from Mrs. Rohr, and all the kids in your class had signed their name. I don't know if you remember that, but Ethan's 5 now. And I guess you would have been teaching 5th grade at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, we still have that, and all the kids signed their name, and it just meant a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So very special. I know you. That was one way that you taught your kids, was by involving them and doing things for other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so that was important. Very meaningful. So what year was it that you shifted? Now, you did like a hybrid for 1 year. You were in the class half-time and then administrator for the childcare.
Yes. So my last year in 5th grade, so that's, I guess 3 years ago, I did part-day teaching, and then when they were off to specials, or we're kind of in the beginning of that master teacher program that we now have in the 3rd through 5th grade. When they were with other teachers, then I would try to help out as best as I could, and was part of the hiring process and learning the teachers and the schedules and everything. And then 2 years ago was my very first year directing by myself with everybody.
Okay. So, and then you talk about now in your role how the time flies, because it's a fun place to work, it's a busy place to work. There may be people who are in jobs where they are just waiting for it to be 5 o'clock.
Sure.
And I'm wondering for you, what makes the time fly? What makes work fun for you?
It's building relationships that I really enjoy. And so I will go and I'll do rounds, because I'll be checking counts to see how many kids are in each room. But I'll also check on the teacher and see how the teacher's doing. And sometimes our teachers are great and sometimes they're not. And so I'll just sit there and talk with them and, be that ear that they have to listen to when, they're taking care of toddlers that, don't quite understand.
They can't really get that emotional support from them.
Talk to me about that, And so I just get to know the teachers, talk with them. Sometimes I just will, I'll cover in the room for a little bit. Maybe they need to step out to go take care of some classroom work outside of the room, and read to the students and just interact with them. And just being a part of with the little kids. I couldn't ever imagine myself in this role, to be honest with you. This is probably, I don't know where I imagined myself, but here would not have ever been one that I would have ever believed if somebody told me I'd be doing. Especially with little kids, like I told you, I was 4th grade, 5th grade. Give me that upper elementary. That's what my mind frame was. That's where I felt, really comfortable in. And then now you have me in charge of infants. I know I had infants, but I don't know if I could, be the leader of that group, because they're so fragile. And I knew my kids, but I don't know babies like other people know babies. And I have absolutely grown to love it. If there's ever coverage needed, I will play, and I need to be part of that coverage. I will put somebody else anywhere and I'll take the infants.
Yeah.
I'm like, which would have been so different from me years ago. I would have been like, give me the 3-year-olds.
Yeah. So what you're doing now, it's a very different thing though, whereas you were in the classroom and that was your group of kids.
Right.
And now you don't have a class, but you are overseeing a program. You interact with the staff as much as with the children. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the differences between being a teacher, being an administrator? What's been hard about that? What's been a natural fit for you?
Sure. I think naturally, I just really enjoy being around people. And so getting to know the families, I could probably tell you who's every child's parent, because I'll just talk with them whenever they're here to drop off. And sometimes I'll have, cover in the morning, or I'll be talking to a teacher in the morning and here they are dropping off, and I'll just sit there and chat with them, see how they're doing, how their family's doing, which is good ministry wise, because they'll tell me, well, this is going on, or we're pregnant. And so it's like, oh, awesome. And so, just building relationships with families, and that's really important. And good customer service, I think, is also very important too. That goes a long way. And so I try to keep that in mind when I'm around and seeing people and talking to people, because that's what keeps you going back, is a good experience. And I don't want somebody to not have a good experience. And if they do have a bad experience, I want to make sure we don't do that again, whatever the reason is. Yeah. So that's been pretty easy for me. Hardships leadership always has good days and bad days, and you just learn from the bad days, and you rejoice in those great days, because the next day might not be so great. But I just have to take everything a day at a time. And if I catch myself up late at night worrying, I just have to tell myself, I can't solve this problem right now. If I'm having a problem with a parent or a teacher, it's 10 o'clock at night. I can't pick up the phone and call them. Let me get some rest. Yeah. Let me relax. And then let's hop into it the next day. So that's something that I've learned to do, is to just not worry. And just, like in the Bible, when it tells you, to not worry and the next day will come. That's what gets me through those days too.
I've learned to not worry. Yeah. That is huge.
Yes. And to not check your email after a certain time. That was always a big one for me too. I put it away, and then it's, family time, because you have to be available, but you also need to be available to your family too.
That's right.
So
yeah, sometimes we're our own worst enemies when it comes to worrying, because I'm checking email as opposed to just being present at home, things like that. So I think that's a good lesson for a lot of people, because definitely. The email is always so present.
Sure, yeah. Definitely. And now with all this going on in the world and social media, that can start interfering with media, and just staying out, focusing on what your main mission in life is, and on to that goal, and making sure that that's being met. I've also learned that the Lord always provides. I'll have a teacher get a job somewhere else, and I'm going, oh, how am I going to fill that position, And he's always provided. Or I'll have, sharing is caring in daycare, and that goes along with germs. And so we'll have a room of sick kids, and then the teacher gets sick, and I have to find coverage. And I'm thinking, I don't know how this day is going to work. But it always has. God has it's never been a day where I walked away just like, that was just a terrible day. Like he's always just made it work. Either kids got picked up early, or we had kids not come in, and I was able to move teachers. So I always have, so when things like that start happening, I always tell myself, no, God's got this under control. Yep. I don't need to worry. It'll all work out. It will work out.
Yeah. Great. You talked earlier about how important it is for you as a leader to get to know families. Well, now we'd like to get to know your family. So who's in your family?
Definitely. So my husband is Mike, and we'll be married 9 years on Thursday, so in a couple of days. So yeah,
happy anniversary.
Thank you. So yeah, we have 2 kids, and Austin and Mackenzie are our kids. And I guess my husband he's back at Concordia University. He was at Lutheran High School for a couple years, and then he does data analysis for enrollment for Concordia University. He's been working from home since October. So
he was ahead of the game.
He was. He had an office set up. Everything was under control for him. So he does that, and then Austin will be going into 3rd grade, and Mackenzie will be going into pre-K, and we play a lot of sports, and Mike coached Austin's teams this season, and Mike took up Little League coaching, which was different than the high school coaching that he used to do. But I guess after 4 games, we were done with the season. So I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. But I know there probably would have been many late nights of us just reliving ball games. So it's probably good that we just had it this season be called. But Austin plays all the sports, and Mackenzie's she likes to watch Austin and play too, but she also has her girly side of dance. So we had our first dance recital in December, and that was really fun. I got nervous for her, like you do for a kid's sporting event. I'm like, how is she gonna do? Which that was fun. But that's our we have a dog. We have a dog, Maggie. She's
Don't leave Maggie
out. She was our first baby. She's an Old English Bulldog, and she just turned 10 this past year. So she's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's your family, and I've got to brag on. Mike, Caleb, and your Austin have played a lot of sports together so far, and Austin's an amazing athlete, especially baseball. He is a budding major league player.
He enjoys his sports, and he's starting to learn the players' names, and he'll just start rattling off people, and I'll look at Mike going, who's he talking about? And he's telling me, oh, so-and-so basketball player or baseball player. Okay, that's whatever. but he enjoys it and enjoys every sport he's gotten into. I played tennis in college, and so I've been trying to get him in tennis, and the tennis swing and the baseball swing, they're not really translating right now. So we'll see how it comes, but he wants to try it and try new things. So that's really good.
Yeah. Well, these are fun years. You've got the sports, you've got dance, you've got a lot of things to enjoy with the kids.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. They keep us busy, but after everything kind of shut down, it was really nice to just kind of get back to the family time and do puzzles together, played board games. And I was looking back at it, and when March hit, I was looking at my calendar. I'm thinking every weekend is booked. We have Little League every weekend. We're going to have dance. We're going to have, and it kind of intimidated me a little bit. And then everything shut down, and I kind of liked it in a way to where we had so much more time together, and Austin learned how to ride his bike, took the training wheels off and did that. And Mackenzie got real good on a scooter, and just those little things like that, because you do get busy with those extracurriculars and they take up your weeknights, your weekends. And it was nice to have a break from that. Yeah.
There have been some hidden blessings, and everything that's gone on. More quality time with family has been at the top of the list. Definitely.
And when we would have our Zoom meetings, and a lot of times the teachers would say, we're just making memories. And that's what I thought about with my kids. Like, we're not going to think about the time of, remember when all this bad stuff happened. Let's think about, hey, remember when we got to do this, I learned to ride my bike. I learned to ride my scooter. We went on walks every night. We did this, turn it to the positives, take a negative and flip it over.
Absolutely. Well, you have a great family. You're a part of the Shepherd family, been a part of the culture for a while. And we're just so blessed by your leadership here for our child care program and your involvement in the school over the years. And so thank you so much for taking your time to share yourself with our audience today, and God's blessings as you continue your ministry.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I know that you did. It's been a great pleasure to get to visit with Katy today. And if you're on campus during the weekdays, you might just see her smiling face all around campus, because she does make herself present all over the place. And I want to thank you so much for your viewership. If you enjoyed this, please share it with somebody else. And we'll see you next time. God's blessings.